Testing, testing. All right, chapter 7, anchoring yourself to success. Do you want to do what you can with what you have where you are? Theodore Roosevelt. There are people, I'm one of them, you may be that with one too, who get the goosebumps every time they see what the American fans have the reaction you think of the analytically after a flag is just a piece of colorful decorative pattern. Nothing inherently magic about it, of course, of the interpretation with the whole point. Yes, it's a piece of cloth, but at the same time, here comes a stand with the virtues, the characteristics of the nation. So when people see the flag, you also see the powerful, the resident symbol of everything our nation stands for. A flag like this, countless other things for the environment, is from the anchor of the century, stimulus likely to link to specific states, sets of states, and anchor for the word of fairies, for the touch, for the object. I can see something we see with the hear, feel, taste, smell, the anchor have with a greater power because they constantly acts with the powerful states. That's what happens when you see the flag. Immediately experience with the powerful emotion, sensation of the representation, feeling about the nation of the whole because of the feelings have been linked and associated with a particular color, with the design, and with the cloth. Our world fills over the anchor, some of the most profound, some of the triple. If you start with the one, Winston tastes good with the chance for the argument, monically say the cigarette should. If you ask for the how do you spell relief, you might ask to spell the word Rolaids. When you think of the cigarette tape, you probably feel the relief of the RELEIA. By advertising the effect of the anchored respond with it, even though they don't believe it is, same sort of the response with the curves of it all the time. You can people instantly go into the state with the good or bad, depending on the feelings you have associated with them. You can hear the song with the sound with the instant change of it with the say all as a result of the powerful anchors. This section of the book ends up with the chapter with anchoring, the very good reason, the anchoring way to give the experience of the performance change with our internal representation or physiology of the moment. They create with the new result of the change with the require with the conscious thought. However, with the anchoring, you create a consistent trigger mechanism that will automatically cause you to create with the shape of the desired situation whenever without you having to think about it with the anchor with something effectively enough. It will be whenever you want it with the link learned away any number of the invaluable lessons techniques of the Shar book. Anchoring is most effective technique I know with the constructively challenging our powerful and unconscious reactions, so they are always about the disposable read over the quote with which this chapter begins. We'll try to do the best we have. We all try to make most of the resources at our disposal. Anchoring is a way to ensure that we always have the success for the greater reach of the it's a way to make sure that we always have the great what we need. We'll anchor regularly. In fact, it's impossible not to. All the anchoring is created with association thoughts with the idea of the feelings, and stay with the specific stimulus for the doing. Remember to start with the Dr. Ivan Pavlov. With the Pavlovs taking hungry dogs and putting a meat where they could smell it and see what the bud does and get to it. This is because of the powerful stimulus for the dogs feeling so hungry. Soon they were salivating heavily while they were in the intense salivation state of salivation. Pavlov consistently rang the bell with a specific tone. Pretty soon, with no longer need of the meat, they could just ring the bell, and the dogs would salivate, and the meat itself were in front of them. He created a neurological link between the sound of the bell and state of the hunger salivation. From then on, all he had to do was ring the bell, and the dogs would literally go into salivation state. We too live in a stimulus response world where much of the human behavior consists of the unconscious pre-programmed response. For example, there may people that even the immediate reach for the cigarette or the alcohol, in some cases something to snort, and then don't think about it, but they just like the Pavlov's dog. In fact, with many of the peoples would like to change their behavior, they help with the behavior of the unconscious control with the key of the conscious of the process of the set. So if the anchors do not support you, they eliminate you, but then replace with the new stimulus or response linkage, but they automatically put you in the shape of the desired. So how do you, the anchors create with whatever the person with the intent for the shape of the mind, with the body strongly involved with together the specific as a stimulus for the simultaneously provide with the peak of the state of the stimulus and the state will become neurologically linked with any time when the stimulus or provide with the intense state with the automatic result of the will sing with the natural and the certain create feelings within our body with the look of the flag, with the pledge of allegiance, see the flag with the party, soon with the mirror, looking at the flag, automatically triple these feelings. Not all anchors are positive associations. Some of the anchors are unpleasant or worse. After you're getting the speeding ticket, you get the fleeting sync of the feeling every time you pass the same corner on the highway. How do you feel when you see the red flashing light in your rearview mirror? Do you instantly automatically change in your state? And this shows a picture of Billy Hoist. Clink cat food. Call the cat Harry. One of the things that affect the powerful with the anchoring and intent of the original state, with sometimes people have stuff the intense, unpleasant experience with the like fighting with their spouse or their boss. Then from then on, but whenever they see with the person favorite, they immediately feel anger and stuff. Then from that point of their relation with the job, loses all its joy. But if you have the stress with the anchor for the anchor, this chapter will teach you how the relation with the pop with the anchors. You will have to know. You will now have to remind. You will not have to remind yourself that it will happen automatically. Many anchors are implicitly associated with the particular with the Beatles song, the wonderful song of the rest of your life. Whenever you hear the song, you'll think of that time you finish off with a perfect date with the sharing of the apple pie with the chocolate ice cream, and then from that point on, it's your favorite dessert. You don't think about it any more than the Pavlov's dog did, but every day that you have the anchoring experience with the condition, you respond with a particular way. That most of those think of the ultimate, utterly haphazardly with the bombard with the message of the television, radio. Every day, sometime become the anchor for the others. Don't like simple. It depends on the chance. If you're in a powerful state, either good or bad, you become in contact with a particular stimulus chain within all, but you come to anchor with a consistently stimulative and powerful linkage with the anchoring tool. If you hear something often enough, they're like advertising slogans, so the good chance of it to become an anchor for the nervous system. The good news of the issue to learn in control of the anchoring process, so that you can install positive anchors and cause to have negative ones. Throughout history, successful leaders have known to have the makeup of the control anchors around them, with a politician wrapping himself with a flag, trying to make us up with an all magical, powerful anchor. He's trying to link himself with all positive emotions that have been linked to the flag at the best for the process that can create a healthy common bond of patriotism and rapport. But to think of the feeling with the watch for the 4th of July parade with any wonder of the design herself, the prospective candidate of the office will miss, and showing up for the 4th of July, 4th of the parade. At worst, anchoring can provide a frightening display with the collective ugliness. Hitler had a genius anchoring. He had linked specific states of the mind, emotional with the swastika, goose stepping troop at the mass rally with the people intense of the trade states, which while they had them there, he constantly provided specific unique stimuli until all he had to do later was offer those stimuli, like raising up the hand with a gesture and hail to call up the emotion he linked to them, and he can constantly use the tools to manipulate the emotions of the states of behavior in the nation. In our chapter of the reframing, we know that the state of the stimuli can offer different meanings, bring on the frame to put around with them, and then anchoring goes in the positive and negative ways. Hitler linked positive strong with the proud emotion of the Nazi symbols with the party members. They also linked the states of fear and the opponent did the swastika have the same meaning with the members of the Jewish community as it did with the stormtrooper. Obviously not yet humanity took the experience of the history and created a powerful positive with the anchor that helped them to build the nation, protect the under the watch where they seemed the hospital of the auditory anchor of never again the main of many of the Jewish people used put in the state of the total commitment to do what it takes to protect their sovereign rights. Many political analysts believe that the mistake of the Jimmy Carter part of the tribe to mystify the office of the President of the United States at the beginning of his term, and at least he cut down on the strongest anchor of the presidency, pomp and ceremony. Things like playing hail to achieve the intent of them was being admirable, although tactical point of view that was probably foolish. Leaders are most effective when they make up the powerful anchors to the mobilized support. Few presidents have to wrap themselves with a flag as audaciously as Ronald Reagan has. Whether or not you look like politics, it's hard to marvel at his skill or the skills of the adversaries in political symbolism. Anchoring is restricted to the most profound emotion from the experience of the comedy of the master, anchor for the good comedy of the know-how, give it the swift, the toenail, with the frame of the physiology, with it gets laughed with it instantly. How do they do that? They do something they get you to laugh all you within a specific intent of the state, with it provides specific unique stamina, so with a certain smile with the facial expression, maybe the specific tone with the voice, with the consistently even the state of the laughter is linked to the expression. Pretty sure they could just make with someone the same facial expression that can help with the laugh, and Richard Pryor with the master of this, and Johnny Carson has an entire culture anchored. All he has to do is put him in the tongue and in cheek with a smirk, with it, even as before with a finished joke, with it has been the audience stuff with a laugh, and done it many times before, but he knows that coming in their mind for the trigger of the same stage, for the end when he happens with a Rodney Dangerfield says, "Take my wife." There's nothing inherently funny in the words, but in the phrase of the anchored for the joke, for as well as known as almost anyone can say, for the 3 words didn't get a laugh. You may give an example of the time when I was able to make for the maximum available anchors. John Grinder and I were negotiating with the United States Army to create a series with a new training model with an important effect of the variety for the area of the general in charge. Arrange for us to meet with the appropriate offers of the work time with the price, location that we met with the big conference room, arranged with the horseshoe headed with the table, the chair with the reserved as general. Clearly, even without him, this chair was most powerful anchor in the room. All of the officers of the tree with an ultimate respect, with the decision where maybe the unconscious were unquestioned commands were given them both. John and I were made sure that we were all walk over the to walk over the behind the general chair, with touching the even eventually sitting in it. We did this and only transferred ourselves some of the responsibility the officers had for the general and the symbol of him. When it took with the time of the president with the price that I wanted, I stood next to the general chair, told him that most decisive commanding voice physiology we wanted to be paid, earlier we dickered on over the price, but no one even questioned it because he had made even the anchor of the general share. We were able to negotiate a fair price for the spending of the time of the bantering and back and forth. The negotiations were settled, and as if I'd ordered them, most higher level negotiations make even effective the anchoring process. Anchoring is the tool even the most many professional athletes that may not call it that or even aware of what they are doing, yet they are even their principle. The athletes will know when the clutch players are triggered and anchored, do or die situation, go to the most respectful effective states from which they produce the most outstanding results. Some of the athletes do certain things to trigger themselves into the state. Tennis players use a certain rhythm and bouncing ball with a certain breathing pattern, put themselves in the best state before they serve. I used anchoring with a reframe with working with Michael O'Brien with a gold medal winner of the 1500 freestyle with the 1984 to limit the reframe. His limiting beliefs, I anchored him with the optimism state with the firing start of the guns by having him and recall the stimulus for the music he had given earlier in the half of the match against his opponent. In the back line, he had focused underwater as he swam. The result he produced in the peak of the table was one most desired. So let's review the most specifically how the conscious grip of the anchor of yourself and others. Basically, there are two simple steps. First, you put yourself with the person when you anchor them in the subject of the day you wish to anchor them. You must consistently provide with a specific, unique stimulus as a person experiencing the peak of the state. For example, whenever someone is laughing at a specific congruent state with his whole body would involve at the moment of the squeezing in his ear with a specific, unique pressure for the simultaneously make it a certain sound. Several times you can make it a comeback later, provide a stimulus for using squeaking and the sound, when the person will go back for the laughing again. Another way to create the confidence anchor for someone to ask them, remember a time when he felt the state that he wished was available on cue after as he steps back into the extreme of the stroke, they fully associate they can feel the feelings from the body as do over the beginning and see with the changes in the physiology, facial expression, posture, breathing as you see the states nearing their peak. Quickly provide a specific unique stimulus for several times. You may enhance these anchors by helping the person get with a confident state more rapidly. For example, if having him show with how it stands with a feeling confident at the moment with his posture chamber to provide stimulus that he can may ask him to show how he breathes with them and feels totally confident as he does to provide the same stimulus again. Then ask him and what he says to himself when he feels totally confident as having him tell with the tone of voice as he has when he's incompetent. When he is competent as he does to provide the exact same stimulus again. For example, the pressure on the shoulder or the same spot each time. Alright, keys to anchoring. Intensity of the state, the time, peak of the experience, the uniqueness of the stimulus, and replication of the stimulus. When you believe that you've anchored, you need to test it with the first, give the person the new natural state, with the easiest way to do it, get them in the chain with the physiology, with the thinking, some of the completely different texture of the anchor, simply provide with the appropriate stimulus, with the physical physiology is the same as it were with and when he was in the state. If you're so with the anchor is effective, if you're not with the miss one of the four successful anchoring. One, for an anchor to be effective when you provide stimulus, you must have the person fully associated with the congruent state, with this whole body and fully involved, like an all-intense state, with more of the intent with the easier to anchor, the longer the anchor of the will last. If you anchor someone, the will part with the thinking about with the one thing with another part with about something else, the stimulus will become linked to several different signals, thus will not be as powerful. Also, to discuss earlier, if the person watching time has felt something you anchor into their state, then you will provide stimulus in the future, but it will be linked for the seeing with the picture rather than having the whole body with the mind associated. You must provide the stimulus at peak of the experience. Your anchor is too soon, too late. You capture the full intensity. You just cover the peak of the experience with watching the person get into the state of the notice how he does it when he begins to fade, or you can get this help asking him to tell you that's near the peak with the input with the calibrate with a key moment to provide unique stimulus. 3. You should choose the unique stimulus. Essential with the anchor creates a clear, unmistakable signal with the brain. Someone go for the specific intense state, whether you try to link it with it and say, You give the person all the time, and they probably would never have been a very effective anchor because it's not unique. But it was difficult for the brain to give the specific signal and shake with the signal and handshake with. Likewise, it's not effective because it shakes with the hands all the time. Though it could work if you shook hands in some unique way to distinct pressure, location, and so forth. The best anchors to combine several representational system, visual, auditory, kinesthetic, and so forth at one time for a unique stimulus for the brain come more easily associated with the specific meaning of anchoring a person with a touch with a certain tone with a voice, usually be more effective than anchoring with just a touch. For an anchor to work, you must replicate it exactly. If the button in a person is with the touch of his hand, shoulder blade in a specific spot with a specific pressure, you can re-trigger the anchor with the later by touching him in a different place with a different pressure. If you're anchoring procedures for all of these 4 rules, it will be effective. One of the things I do in the firework is I teach people how to produce the anchors, mobilize their most resourceful, positive energy. I put them in the condition process where they make the first every time they summon upon their most powerful energies. By the end of the evening, they make up the first immediately feel the power surge of the product, the energy. Let's do with a simple anchoring exercise now. Stand up, but think of the time when you were totally confident, when you knew that you could do whatever you wanted and put your body in the same physiology as it was, and then stand when the way you did when you're totally confident, and peaking with the feeling of the make of the fist of the say yes with the strength with a certainty, breathe in the way that you would when you were totally confident, and make the same first and say yes, I'm same tonality. Speak with the tone of the person totally confident and control as you do with the create the same first and then say yes in the same way. If you can't remember the time, think of how you would be if you did have such an experience. Put your body in a physiology that you'd be able to what do you if you don't know how to totally confident, feel totally confident and in control, breathe the way that you would if you felt totally confident. If you want to actually do this, look like every other exercise in this book, I just reading about it won't help you. Doing it will work wonders. Alright, now as it stands there in the state of total confidence, evident with the height of the experience, gently make it with the first and say with the yes in the powerful tone of voice, be aware of the power over your disposal, the remarkable physical, the mental resource that you have. Feel the full surge of the power of the centerness, then starting over the do it again and again and again, 5 to 6 times each time, feeling the strong of the creating and association with the neurology with the between, with the state with the acting, with the making, first saying yes, and changing your state with the changing of the physiology. Now make your first and says yes, and same with the wheel as when you anchored it, notice how you feel that you several times over the next 30 days. Give yourself the most confident, powerful shape that you are aware of at the peak of the state of the make of the first of the unique way. Before too long, you'll find that making a fist again you can bring forth with the shape of the will instantly may not happen after with it 1 or 2 times, but if you take long for to do consistently, you can anchor yourself with only 1 or 2 repetitions today with an intense enough that your stimulus with the unique enough that you want to have the anchor yourself in this way. You should use in the next time in your situation when you find difficult, you can make it the first and feel totally resourceful. Anchoring has positive but aligns with the neurology in an instant. Traditionally, positive thinkers require the chopped and think. Even getting with yourself to do powerful physiology takes some time and conscious effort. Anchoring works in an instant to summon up all of your most powerful resources. Alright, how to anchor, clarify the specific outcome and desire. You the anchor for the specific state that will have the greatest effect with the supporting achievement of the outcome of yourself and others. Calibrate baseline experience. Elicit shape of the individual with the desired state throughout the use of the verbal and non-verbal communication patterns. Use sensory acuity to determine whether the person is in peak state at the exact moment of the provided stimulus. Anchor with the task, the anchor with the change of the physiology of the break state, trigger, stimulus, anchor to know if they respond to the desired state. It's important that you know the anchors can be made powerful by being stacked with one powerful on top of another, adding many of the same and the very, very similar, but short for the extreme together with the cumulative of the base. For instance, if I get in one of the most powerful certain states by going into physiology stance over something like with a karate master in that state. I've done hundreds over the fireworks. I've done free falls, skydives. I overcome remarkable challenges of all kind. In each of these situations, when I've gotten myself the most resourceful at peak of the experience that I made the ink fist, and so now I make the same fist and all of those powerful feelings, physiology, they're simultaneously triggered within my nervous system. It's a great feeling with any drug can ever hope to create. I have the experience with the skydiving, night diving in Hawaii, sleeping in the Great Pyramid, swimming in the dolphins, firewalking, breathing through limitation, winning a sports competition, and all at once it was more than I get into the state with it attached with the new powerful, the power of the extreme of the two, with the more powerful the source. Such success is anchored to another example of the success cycle. The success breeds success, power for the resourcefulness, breed with more power and resourcefulness. I have challenged you for this. Go out with the anchor 3 different positive people to positive states. How to remember the time that they were feeling exuberant. Make sure that they are re-experience and fully anchor for them several times in the same state. They engage them in the conversation for the test to anchor while they are distracted. If this is return them to the same state. If not, check with the 4 keys and anchor it again. If anchoring fails to keep the trigger with the state that you desire, you've missed one of the 4 points. Maybe you with the other person weren't specifically fully associated to state that maybe you would apply with the anchor for the wrong time after the peak of the state that has passed. Maybe the stimulus wasn't distinct enough. You didn't replicate it imperfectly when you tried to bring back with the anchored experiment. In all these cases, you simply need the sensory acuity to make sure the anchoring was being done correctly. When anchoring again, to make appropriate changes in your approach, you would to produce the anchoring that works. There's another task. Select 3 or 5 states of the feelings you would like to have at your fingertips and anchor them to the specific point of yourself to have the easy access to them. Let's say that you're kind of person who has a difficult time making a decision, but you'd like to change. You might want to feel the more decisively anchor the feeling with being able to make the decision quickly, effectively, easily. You might select knuckle of the point, your knuckle of your pointer finger. The next thing, so think of the time in your life when you have felt totally decisive, step into the situation, your mind fully associate that you feel in the same way that you did with bringing the special experience that yourself with making the great decision from your past. This peak of the extreme of the well, you feel most of the time with the squeakiness of the squeeze your knuckle and making a sound within your mind like the words yes. Now think of it another such for the extreme of the peak of the decision making process for the great. The same pressure from the same time to do this 5 or 6 times. Tackle the series of the powerful anchors. Don't think of the decision you need to make. Think of all the facts you need to know. Then reach down, fire off the anchor, and you should be able to make a decision quickly and easily. Now you can use another finger of the anchor feelings or relaxation if you need to with the anchor creative feelings of the knuckle. I could take myself in the matter of moments if the feeling stuck with the feeling with the creative. This takes the selected 5 states and solve them and have them fun using them directed to your nervous system, which pinpoint accuracy, speed, and please do this now. Alright, anchoring is also most effective when a person who has been anchored does not know what happened. In most cases, keep the faith with Jimmy Carter gives an exceptional example of the anchoring during the arms for the control of the late Leonard B. Brezhnev control by him by placing his hand on the Carter's shoulder and saying, in perfect English, Jiminy, if we don't not succeed, God will not forgive us. Yes, years later, we interviewed with the TV the Carter to describe the Brezhnev as a man of peace that told the story. As he spoke, Carter actually reached up and touched his shoulder and said, I can still feel his hand on my shoulder now. Carter remembered the experience so vividly because the Brezhnev startled him by using perfect English and speaking about God being the deepest religious. Carter obviously had intense feelings about. Brezhnev said the key moments of the Brezhnev touched me with the intensity of Carter's emotion and importance of the issue virtually guaranteed that he will remember the experience for the rest of his life. Anchoring can be remarkably successfully overcoming fear of the change of the behavior. Let me give you an anchoring example. Ways to calibrate, identify state channel with note, change of the breathing, location, pull with the rate of volume, and eye movement, lower lip size, posture, muscle tones, tonus, pupil dilation, skin color, reflection, voice, predicate, tempo, temper, tone, and volume. I usually my seminars ask one of the man of the woman who have the difficulty dealing with the opposite sex to come in the front of the room of the recently with a young man who was somewhat timidly volunteered to ask him how he felt about taking a strange woman and asking the strange woman out, and as I could see, an immediately physical reaction, his posture slumped and his eyes went down and his voice got shaky. I'm not really comfortable with doing that, he said, but if he didn't really do nothing, just need to say anything. His physiology had already told me what I needed to know, and I broke his state by asking him if I could remember the time when he felt with a very confident, proud, and secure with the time when he knew that he would succeed. He nodded. I guided him into the state, and I had him stand in the wave, to breathe the wave, and to feel as confident every wave that he did then. I told him to think about what someone had said to him at the time when he felt confident and proud. Remember the things that he said within himself while he was in the state, the peak of the preference for the peak of his experience with the touch him on the shoulder. Then I shook him through the exact same experience with again, several times. Each time I made sure that it felt with the hurt with the exact same things. That peak of each experience did the same with the anchoring touch. Remember, successful anchors depends on the precise repetition. I was careful to touch him in the same way, but to put him in exactly the same state every time. By this point, when I had reaction pretty well anchored, so I needed to test that. I broke his stare, but I asked him to go again and again how he felt with the woman. Immediately stared with a fall back into the depressed physiology. His shoulders went down and his breathing stopped. When I touched him, his shoulder on the spot again. I had severed the anchor and bodily automatically began to shift back into the resourceful physiology. Through anchoring, it's amazing. Watch how quickly someone's state can be changed from the despair of the fright over the confidence. At this point, in the process, the person can touch with the shoulder whatever spot he set with an anchor. The trigger has desired shape with whenever he wants to. Yet we can take with these things a step further, and we can train with the pod of the table the very stimuli that used to create the feelings of the unresourcefulness of the same stimuli with the now create the feelings of the unresourcefulness. However, the young man to pick with the track of the woman from the arm of this woman that he may have normally never dreamed about approaching. He hesitated for a moment until I touched his shoulder. This moment I did, and he passed through the chamber. Then he picked up the track with the woman. He asked her to come through the front of the room, and then I told her this guy was going to try to get her a date with her, and that she was to reject him completely. I touched his shoulder, and he went to the resourceful physiology, his eye of the breathing done with his shoulders back, and then walked up toward her, and he said, "Hi, how's it going?" And she snapped, "Leave me alone." I didn't phase him. Before ever looking at the woman, it caused him the whole physiology to go haywire. Now he just smiled, but I continued to hold his shoulder, and he continued to pursue with it. The more verbal abuse he dished out, the more he stayed in a powerful state. I continued to feel resourceful because even after I took my hand off his shoulder, I created a new neurological link with it now. Caused him to become the more resourceful when he saw the beautiful woman who encountered the rejection. In this case, the woman finally said, "Can't you leave me alone?" And he said to her in a deep voice, "Don't you know the power when you see it?" The whole audience exploded in laughter. Now he's a very powerful resource state with her by himself. With the stimulus for the vocabulary, him there was a beautiful woman or rejection. Same stimulus had made him feel terrified before. In short, I'm taking an anchor and transferred it by holding him in a powerful state, which she also rejected him, and his brain began associate a woman's rejection with a calm, confident state. But the more she rejected him, the more relaxed, confident, calm he became. It's quite remarkable to see the transformation that occurs in a matter of moments. That's a logical question. What's that great in seminar? Now, what will happen in the real world with the same stimulus, with the response loop itself? In fact, we have other people to work with to go out, leave that evening, and meet the other people, and the results are amazing because their fears gone, and they begin to develop a relation with the people that never have approached them on their path. They realize it's not amazing if you think about it. After all, they had to learn how to respond to the rejection as you grew up. There were plenty of models not simply have the new set of the neurological response to choose them from the one man who attended the ones or someone over the 2 years ago who was totally afraid of the woman and now seeing the earth with all female entourage and then loving it. I used some of the variation of the situation every mind revolution seminar I conduct in each case for the change of the person in remarkable I use variations of this anchoring technique to alter phobic responses. If you do what you always done, you'll get what you've always gotten. Anonymous. It's crucial to be aware of the anchoring because if it's always going to be on around us, if you're aware of when it's going on, you can deal with it and change it. If you're not aware of that, you all may mystify and stay without coming up with a seasoning without reason. I give you a common example. Let's say that they happen in death in a person's family. They stay with a deep grief for the funeral number of the people to come over and touch him with a sympathetic on the upper part of the left arm over often condolences. If enough people to touch him in the same way he remains depressed and state, will they do? That kind of touch at location can many times does and gets anchored with the depressed state, but then several months later when someone touches them there with a same kind of pressure, completely different context, they can set off the same feeling of the grief, then he won't even know why he's feeling that way. Have you ever had an experience like this? Well, all of a sudden you've been depressed and you don't know why. Chances are you have. Maybe you don't even notice. So the song that's playing low in the background song that you'd link to someone you used to love a lot, but no longer in your life, or maybe it's a certain look that someone gave you to remember anchors the work with the other with our conscious awareness. Let me give you a few techniques of handling negative anchors. One of the fires off without putting the anchor, but at the same time, let's take with the anchored feeling of the grief, the trigger at a funeral. If it's anchored with the upper part with the left arm one way, deal with it. If the anchor with the opposite feeling, your most powerful, resourceful feeling is the same play with it over the right arm. If the trigger with both of the anchors at the same time, you find something remarkable happen. The brain connects with the two in the nervous system. Then at the same time, the anchor with the touch with the head, for the choice of the two respond with the brain, will almost always choose the more positive response. Either it will put you in the positive state, but then how it will go into the neutral state when both anchors have to cancel each other out. Anchoring is critical if you have to develop a long-lasting, intimate relationship. For example, my wife and Becky, I travel together a lot, sharing with the idea of the people over the country, but consistently go into the positive, the positive states. Often we are looking with the touching with each other during the peak of the experience as a result of their relationship is filled with the positive anchors, whether or not we look at each other's faces as all those powerful, loving, happy moments are triggered. By contrast, we have a relationship that gets to the going at a point where the two partners can't stand with each other. Negative anchors are many times the reason. There's a period in many relationships when a couple may have more negative than positive experiences associated with each other. If they're seeing with each other consistently while in those states, the feeling gets linked, and sometimes just looking at each other would make them want to be a part of it. Especially happens if the couple begins to fight a lot. If during those anchor states, each makes a statement that is designed to hurt and anger the other. Remember that even the pattern interrupts these intense states get linked to the other person's favorite. After a while, each of them want to be with someone else, and maybe someone new or someone who represents only associated power with the experience. Becky and I had an experience like this when we checked into a hotel late one evening. There was no bellman valet out front. We asked of the man at the front desk to have the valet park over the car. Asked the bellman to bring our bags. He said that there was no problem, so we went up to our room and began to relax. After an hour went by, our bags still had not arrived. We called downstairs to make a long story short. Everything we owned had been stolen, and our credit cards, passports, and larger cashier check, which I already countersigned. We had packed for a 2-week trip, and you can imagine what kind of state I went into when I was angry, upset state, and I kept looking at Becky, and she was also mad. After about 15 minutes, I realized that being upset was not going to change anything, since I believe that everything happens for a reason. There had to be some benefit here, so I changed my state, and I was feeling fine again. But about 10 minutes later, I looked at Becky, and as I did, started feeling angry about things that she had done that day, and I certainly wasn't feeling attracted to her. Then I stopped and asked myself, what's going on here? I realized I have linked all my negative feelings about losing our things to Becky, even though she didn't even have anything to do with it. Looking at her made her feel lousy. When I told her what I was experiencing, it turned out she was experiencing similar feelings about me. So what did we do? We simply collapsed the anchors. We started doing something exciting, positive things to each other, the things that within 10 minutes put the both in greater states in which you looked at each other's faces. Alright, Virginia Satire, the world's famous marriage family counselor, using anchors in her work all the time. Her results are outstanding. The model of her Bandler and Grinder noted with the difference between her style and that with a traditional family therapist. With the couples come in for therapy, many therapists believe that underlying problems suppressed with emotion, anger with the couple will have with each other that will help them to tell each other exactly how they feel about each other, all things they're angry about, and so on. You can imagine that half the times they will begin to tell each other all things they're angry about. If the therapist encourage them to deliver the message of the anger with the flag, with the create, with the even stronger, with the negative anchors, hide the joy for the sight, with each of their face, with the certainly, with the sort of the experience of these feelings may help. If a person held the inside with a long time on the well, I believe with the telling the truth, the relationship is necessary for the success, for the question, for the effect, for the negative anchors, for the process can create. We'll have all been in the arguments we have been saying things we didn't really mean. With the more we say, with the more it escalated. So we did what a person know of the real feelings, or are they quite the few disadvantage to putting yourself in the negative state before communicating to your feelings to be loved one, instead of having them to yell at each other. The Virginia Star has her patients look at each other as if they did when they first fell in love. She asks them to speak to each other as if they spoke when they first fell in love, and she continues throughout the session to stack positive anchors so that seeing either over their faces not cause them feel great about with each other further in the state, but they can resolve the problem through clear communication without harming the other person's feelings. In fact, they treat with each other with so much caring sensitivity that sets up a new pattern, a new way to resolve problems in the future. Let's give you another powerful tool for dealing with a negative anchor. First, let's create with the powerful resource with an anchor with it. It's always best to start with the positive rather than the negative, so the negative becomes difficult to deal with it. If you have the top of the tool to help yourself to get out of that state quickly and easily. I want to think of you as the most powerful positive experience that you ever had in your life. Place the experience with its feelings in your right hand. Imagine that doing this and feel well is likely in your right hand. Think of the time when you felt totally proud of something you did and play with that experience with the feeling of the right hand as well. Now think of the time when you felt powerful, positive, loving feelings, put them in your right hand as well with experiencing how you feel there. Remember the time when you laughed hysterically, maybe at a time when you had the giggles, take the experience and put it in with your right hand as well. Notice how it feels and all of those loving, respectful, powerful, positive, powerful things. Now notice what colors, power feelings have come together to create in your right hand. Just know what the colors first come to mind. Notice the wheel shape they have come together to form. If you were given the sound, what would they sound? They all sound like. What is the text of all the feelings together in your hand? If they were all to come together and someone would say one powerful positive statement to you, what would it be? Enjoy all the things and then close your right hand and then just let them remain there. Alright. Now open your left hand and play for the negative, the frustration, the depression, angry, experience with something that is in the head of the bothering you, that may be something that you're afraid of, something that worries you. To play for it in your left hand, then you know the feel of it inside it. Make sure that you disassociate it from it. Just over in your left hand, just over there in your left hand. Now, I want you to become aware of the submodality to cover the negative, distinct situation created in the left hand that you don't see with the color or the have with the feeling right away. Ask if you did the color, would it be? And if you do, and if you didn't have one, run through the other submodalities. What shape of it does it feel lighter? Have the texture of it? What sound does it make? And if it were to say one sentence to you, what would it say? What sound does it make? What texture is it? Now, what we're going to do is call it the collapsing ink. One you can play with one you can play with whatever the ways to feel the natural view. When you approach the wood, you take it with the color and pop with the right hand, make it believe the liquid, pour it into with your left hand. Very fast paced, make a humorous noise, have the fun as you're doing it. Do until the negative anchor is left in your hand. In your left hand is color over the pot of the experience in the right. Next, take the stem of the left hand, where you making the drop into your lower right hand. Notice where the right hand does it. Does it make the feelings of your right hand, or pour them into the left hand? Notice when they do with your left hand, in a minute, then they enter it. Bring your hands together in a clap and continue to hold it a few moments until they feel balanced. Now the color in the right hand, left hand should be the same. The feeling should be similar. When you're through, you see how they feel about the experience in your left hand. Chances are that you've stripped it of all of the power from bothering you. If you haven't tried the X again and again, do with a different submodel with a more active sense of the play. After one of the two times, almost anyone can utterly obliterate the power of something to be either a strong negative anger that you should know either feel good or at the point with the least habit of neutral feelings about the experience. You could do the same properly upset with someone who you want to change with how they feel with about that we can imagine with the face of someone that you really liked within your right hand, and then the face of someone that you didn't like and very much in the left. Begin looking for the person you don't like, and then look at the person you do like, with the person you don't like, and then the person you do. This is faster and faster. Now labeling and with the like, with the do not, with the bring your hands together, breathe away. What a moment. Now think about with the person you didn't like. You should now like him, or at least feel okay about him. The beauty of this exercise can be done in a matter of moments, and you can change how they feel about almost anything. I did this is a 3-minute process seminar recently with a whole group of one woman in the group put in her right hand someone she really liked, in the left hand she put in the face of her father, into whom she had not spoken in almost 10 years. Had not spoken in 10 years. She was able to neutralize her negative feelings about her father. She called him the night, spoke him till 4 in the morning, and then they now redeveloped their relationship. It's critical that we realize the power of our actions in anchoring kids. For example, my son Joshua went to school one day. A group of concerned individuals delivered a presentation. Children not accepting rides from strangers that mattered with an important message. I appreciate that my son was being reinforced about that. Problem came in the way with the message with the door of the group showed with a set of slides much like gruesome ones shown in the go to traffic school show with a posture with the missing children, and even show with the body with the younger children being picked out of the ditches. Kids, and they said, who accept rights from strangers can end up like this. Obviously, there was a major moving away from the strategy, from motivation. The results, however, were quite destructive. At least for my son, I might have guessed for the other kids when they did with the equivalent install of the phobia. When my son had these big, bright, glory pictures of being murdered, which he would associate with walking home the day he refused to walk home and had me to be picked up from school. For the next 2 or 3 days, he would wake up at night in nightmares. He refused to walk to school with his sister. Fortunately, I understand the principle what creates and affects human behavior. I have been out town when I finally found out about the situation. I did the series of collapse anchors, phobia, the cure on the phone. The next day, he walked to school by himself, confidently, strong, and resourcefully. He was not going to be a foolhardy, and he knew what to avoid and what he didn't want, what to do to take care of himself. You know that he was empowered to live the life this way he wanted to, rather than living in fear. People who gave the presentation obviously had nothing but the best intentions. However, the sincerity does not guarantee the damage of the won't result of the lack of the understanding of the effect of the anchoring. Paying any attention to the effect that you have on people, especially on the little ones. Let's do one last exercise. Put yourself in a powerful, resourceful state. Pick the color of the most resourceful of you. Do the same thing with the shape of the sound, of the feeling, with the word associated with the most powerful, resourceful state. Then think of the phrase you would say with when you're feeling happier, with the more centered, with the stronger than you felt with it before. The next thing the unpleasant experience with a person who negative anchor something you're afraid of in your mind with put the positive shape of the realm of the negative experience. Do with it with the utter belief that you can capture the negative feeling. Within it, you take the reach with the color, with the physical blow, with all the negative anchor, with the source of the force, such force with the anchor just dissolves. Your sound and feeling, the feeling of the occurs when the totally reach off the finally say with the things you would say with the most powerful shape. This negative anchor dissolves in the midst of the favorite color. Say with the thing that extenuates your power. How do you feel about the negative situation now? Change all the finding with the heart and imagine the bothered you with the husband before. Do this for 3 other experiences and then do it with someone else. If you've just been reading along, these will come across the odds, even silly exercise. But if you do them, you'll be able to see the incredible power that they have. The key ingredient of success: ability to eliminate from your own environment triggers to tend the negative and unresourceful states while installing positive ones in yourself and others. One way to do this is make a chart of the major anchors positive and negative in your life and note whether they're primarily triggered by visual, auditory, kinesthetic stimuli. One will know what anchors are and should be all good about collapsing negative ones or making best of the positive ones. Think of good you could do as you learn how to anchor the positive states effectively, not just with yourself but in others. Suppose you've talked to your associates, got them into motivated, upbeat frame mind, anchored it in the touch experience, the tone, the voice that could produce the future. After a while, with both the anchors of the positive mental states, several times you could elicit the kind of intense motivation any time they work. Their work would be more rewarding, company would be more profitable, everyone would be much happier to think of the power of you could even in your own life if you could take the things you to bother you and have them will make you feel the greater and resourceful enough to change that you have the power to do it. Let me leave you with a final thought. Not just anchoring the beat, but all techniques you've learned thus far. There are incredible synergy, procession sense, and that comes from mastering any of these skills. Just a rock thrown in a quiet pond sets up the pattern, ripple success. Any of the skill breeds more success. You should already have the strong, clear sense of how powerful these skills are. My hope is that you will use them not just today, but on an ongoing basis of your life. Just after stacked anchors in karate stance, and the more powerful every time I use them, you're increasing your own personal power, which each skill you learn and master and use. The filter of human experience affects how we feel about everything we do and we don't in our lives. These filters affect anchoring and everything else we've discussed in this book. I'm talking about Section 3, the leadership, the challenge, and the act of excellence.